here to go through a question called the history of Europe. We're going to look at a number of things like the French Revolution, as we looked at some events in the recent videos. So today I want us to look at the causes of the French Revolution, but remember we looked at different causes. We looked at the role played by the philosophers, whereby we are able to mention about some few philosophers like Lao Tzu between 1712 to 1778. These philosophers, they criticized the government, they wrote different articles, they wrote different books concerning the ways of life of the nobles, the ways of life of the clergy, the ways of life of the peasants, the ways of life of the bourgeoisie or the middle class. So they criticized the government. They also wrote different notes demanding for liberty, equality, nationalism, and therefore in their writings they are trying to demand for political reforms and social reforms and economic reforms. So their writings influenced the lives of the people, and at the end of the day it opened the doors for the 1789 French Revolution. We have different philosophers like Voltaire. Between 1694 to 1778, he was one of the intellectuals. He was one of the influential philosophers who wrote a number of articles. 70 of them were trying to expose the weaknesses of the Bourbon's monarchy, and therefore in his writings he was trying to criticize. He was exposing the monarchy's evil part, and therefore he was trying to impart the idea of nationalism in the French people. So Voltaire's writings influenced a number of people in France, who at the end of the day resulted to what we call the 1789 French Revolution. He talked about the punishments, the brutality of the Bourbon's monarchy. He talked about the overtaxation of the Bourbon monarchy, who overtaxed the peasantry class. He talked about the heavy debts. He talked about the useless wars that the government, the monarchy involved itself in. Look at the 1783 American War of Independence, where the monarchy spent almost the monarchy spent a lot of money, and yet this war was not meaningful on the side of the French. It sent the French youth to go and participate in the war that was not for France. We have Montesquieu between 1689 to 1755. He was also one of the inspirational writers or philosophers who was trying to campaign for great work, who was trying to expose, look at the spirit of laws. He was trying to write about the judicial system of France. He was trying to actually comment on the parliament of France. So this man gave views, his attitude towards the Bourbon's monarchy. He emphasized the necessity in any way legislated states of separating carefully the three powers of the government: legislative, the executive, and judicially. So he was trying to show and also expose how the monarchy has interfered the three branches of government, and yet they wanted to exercise what they call democracy. So philosophers wrote a number of essays. They wrote a number of books criticizing and delivering their message to the people, showing their grievances, showing their discontentedness, and among others. So their writings influenced the lives of the people, who later on saw them as messiahs, who later on saw them as the only way to their success. So philosophers were part of the causes of the 1789 French Revolution. We have other thinkers like the encyclopedists also were agents of the 1789 French Revolution. They contributed a great work towards the outbreak of the 1789 French Revolution. So besides these three giants, there were other writers who were responsible for that 1789 French Revolution. They considerably influenced the thoughts of the people. They manipulated the minds of the people, showing them what they're supposed to do. The encyclopedists, they also influenced the lives of the people. What did they do? They just went and summarized what the philosophers had composed, and they made it more easier for the readers. They made it more easier for the people to get the message. The encyclopedists, they just summarize altogether. So they wrote different, they summarized different books, they summarized different articles, they summarized different essays, which at least helped the people, the readers, or which even simplified the work of the philosopher at the end of the day. So these encyclopedists, their work was to summarize altogether. They easily made the matters simple. They could just go, they make, for example, if you wrote a bigger paragraph, for them they just picked what we call the core point in the essay, then they make it simple for the readers to understand, and at the end of the day, it just pushed the 1789 French Revolution. We want to look at the system of administration as another cause of the 1789 French Revolution. So the government of France was a naked, despotism altogether. Practice what we call despotism, dictatorship, and above all, it was nepotism. Nepotism, corruption, embezzlement, abuse of human rights, denial of people's rights, among other things. So the king combined in his person legislative, executive, and judicial powers. So the king was the overall, he was the king, he was the president, he was the advisor, though he had advisors, but these advisors were not that much important. So the king centralized the power. He was actually interfered. He took over all the three branches of government: the legislative council, the judicial council, and at the end of the day, executive council. So the court was corrupt beyond measure. Altogether, the courts were corrupt. So since 1614, the State General Meeting had not been convened altogether. The State General Meeting had spent almost 175 years without meeting. So particularly, people's problems were not listened to. People had challenges. Farmers had challenges. Remember, France was attacked by seasonal winters, earthquake, the natural calamities. But they didn't have where they could go and report their matters. They did not have what we call representatives in the parliament or in their government. So this later on made them to face a lot of challenges just to keep quiet and see the world moving. But fortunately, it was 5th of May 1789. That's when the king called the Estate General Meeting after spending a lot of years without meeting. So the king was pushed to call for the Estate General Meeting, but specifically, it was after the state experiencing what we call the skyrocketing financial crisis. So the king was advised by his financial reformists, Necker and Turgot, to call for the three classes to come: the first class of the clergy, second class of the nobilities, and the third class of the peasants and the middle class. So these people came expecting a lot of things, but to their disappointment, when they came, they found when the king was just looking at how they should solve their personal matters. So The system of administration in France was not good. Cases of despotism were too much. There was the abuse of human rights, corruption and embezzlement, injustice in the courts, everything. So at the end of the day, these are the things that annoyed the peasants. These are the things that annoyed the middle class to the extent of picking arms and fight in the 1789 French Revolution. However, the revolution started in a peaceful way. By the end of the day, it turned to be violent. That's why we are seeing the reign of terror coming up. We are seeing revolution in France. A lot of things happened originating from the 1789 French Revolution. So people, after going through a lot, they looked at the revolution as the last resort. They looked at the revolution as their solution to their problems. At the end of the day, it could not leave France in the same way. Then we have the legal system of administration. So since the country was full of confusion, there were no uniform laws. Are we together? There were no uniform laws. In one place there was German law, and in another part there was Roman law. So this kind of administration, this kind of system, it estimated that it implemented, it showed that there were actually this kind of system, it estimated that there were even more than 400 different kind of system of laws in the country. They did not have a well-organized legal system. So they are just copying from the neighbors, they were just influenced by other people. So torture was a common feature during the regime of Bourbon monarchy. There was confusion not only in the field of law, but also in the field of the courts. So there were a lot of confusion in the legal system of France. At the end of the day, it made the revolution inevitable by 1789. So the influence of the American War and the Irish experience also led to the outbreak of the 1789 French Revolution. France helped the Americans to restore their colonies. America had lost the 13 colonies to Britain. So when America had lost the 13 colonies to Great Britain. However, in their struggle to restore their lost territories, their lost colonies, France came in and gave a helping hand. King Louis XVI sent a number of soldiers or troops, and in addition to this or to that, he gave them financial support. So when the soldiers went to help the Americans, they copied a lot of things from the Americans, and still they were able to get that spirit of nationalism. They were like, the Americans were fighting for independence. The Americans were fighting for self-rule. The Americans were fighting for unification. The Americans were fighting to see that they are independent. Then at home, we are not independent. We are having influence of the clergies and etc. So such things pushed them to fight after being inspired by the Americans in their struggle to get their lost colonies. We have financial cause. The financial problem also opened the doors for the outbreak of the 1789 French Revolution. And when we talk about financial cause, we are looking at the skyrocketing financial crisis, whereby we say that the financial situations in France were alarming. France's economy was swimming in a pool of poverty. France was just there. So when you look at their system or their economic system, it was not good, and therefore, because of having poor economic structures, it made the French people to experience a lot of challenges. One, they were overtaxed. Two, the methods they used in the process of taxation were brutal, and it is the state that caused this kind of confusion in the economic sector, whereby the queen herself was more extravagant. She loved gambling. She added a burden on the French economy. At the end of the day, it was driving the economy backward, not forward. She used to put on expensive dresses, expensive shoes, wasting a lot of money in gambling, and the king just covered his ears and eyes as if he was not seeing what was going on in the French economy. So at the end of the day, these things caused a lot of problems on the side of the peasants. The peasants were the victims of every problem. So this made the peasants to look at the revolution as the last resort to answer their question. We have another cause. Let us see. They're just showing you there how extravagant, how did the economic thing cause this revolution. They are showing you Necker. Necker and Turgot were one of the influential financial reformists in the French economy who influenced the process. Let us see other causes of the 1789 French Revolution. Let us look at others. So up here they have been trying to show you how did the financial problem cause the 1789 French Revolution. They talk about elections began to take place for a meeting of Estate General. The Estate General meeting consisted of the three estates of our classes. It was three-chambered body, and the first two chambers consisted of the nobles and the clergymen, and the third included the nobles and the peasants. So they are trying to show you how did the financial problem cause the 1789 French Revolution. We have the 1789, the king summoned what we call the Assembly of Nobles with the view of tackling the financial problem and to get the consent or the solution, and whereby he was advised to overtax and also to increase on the to introduce new taxes, yet the people could not even afford what was already there. So a number of things under financial issues caused the 1789 French Revolution. But with that, let me submit from here. Have a good day.